All right. First off, just want to thank you for taking the time for doing this. I know you've got a crazy schedule, just went through some of it, but really appreciate you taking the time, getting to talk to a lot of the folks that make the charts for you.
Thank you. Appreciate you having me. Do I just dive right in?
Yeah, talk about your story, how you got into this crazy business, how it kind of led you to where you are now.
Yeah, so becoming a sportscaster was the dream that I always had in my mind since I was like in kindergarten, and everything, every effort, every energy kind of moved towards that, whether it was directly or indirectly. So I played sports growing up, and then when I got to high school, involved like many people who are interested in getting into the TV broadcasting business, the morning announcements and writing for the high school newspaper and yearbook. And that carried over to college when I went to Florida A&M University. I majored in broadcast journalism, and I tried my hand at literally everything, and was the PA announcer. That's when I first got introduced to doing play-by-play for our basketball teams and our softball teams via radio. But I knew that the best road for what I wanted to do, I thought at the time, was going into local television. So that's how I ended up in Savannah. I started out as a part-time production assistant for the first like 6 months of my young career at a startup station, doing everything behind the scenes. And then I moved to Savannah and was a live truck operator, a one-man band, you name it. I literally tried and did everything in a newsroom. And I still feel confident that I could almost run a live shot now, even years removed. But that's what I feel like helped me throughout, just because having an appreciation for everything that each position does to help us form the best team possible was something that I feel like I took over from sports, and sports, it carried over into the real world. And then when I left Savannah after about 3.5 years, kind of doing general assignment reporting and some sports here and there, I then moved to Orlando with a 24-hour sports network, or news network at the time, which was Central Florida News 13. And then they started up a sports network, but I was still doing like all feature reporting. So that was the fun part, that I didn't get to do sports full time for a while, but I was always around it, and just kept knocking at the door, letting my interest be known to everyone who was in management who would listen, and those who didn't want to listen too. But the 24-hour sports network was Bright House Sports Network at the time. I think that was the changing point in my career, right? Because I got to do play-by-play more frequently, and then when they picked up a contract with the Florida High School Sports Athletic Association, then I got to call state basketball games, championships for girls and boys, and softball and baseball and volleyball. And that's where I think it really opened my eyes to another career path. And I also saw a deficiency, if you will, or just a lack of representation in the play-by-play chair. Because growing up, everybody that I listened to was like Pat Summerall, Bob Costas. I was a huge Cubs fan. So Steve Stone was the play-by-play, but I was absolutely in love with Harry Carey because he was just most entertaining. And so, those were among the voices that I heard on you hear Von Lundquist on Saturdays, Jim Nance later on for me. So I just wanted to hear a different, voice. And I remember the one person that I saw who is my shero to this day still is Robin Roberts. And so Robin Roberts for me just epitomized all that is class and genuine authenticity and professionalism. And so I knew she did some women's basketball, and as well as, Sports Center anchor. Pam Oliver was another person for me who was a little bit more closely related because she attended Florida A&M as well. So I had the opportunity to meet her when I was in college. And those relationships and just seeing really those two women help to, make a difference or make me feel like I could do it in a space where it was just uncommon at the time. And it's still relatively uncommon, but I think it's growing more and more from that point. And so when I was in Orlando, I got to freelance with ESPN doing college football sideline reporting. And it wasn't until the 2015, I think it was, Women's Final Four, which was here in Tampa, that I met with a coordinating producer for ESPN for the Olympic sports. And she said, hey, well, you do volleyball and you do softball. So why don't you come on over and give the play-by-play chair a chance full time? And that's how I got my opportunity full time with ESPN after having a relationship with them starting a few years back.
Was play-by-play always the route you wanted to go?
I loved telling stories. So I figured that I would be a long-time sports reporter, right? And not just sideline reporter for football, but just telling stories in the longer format. So maybe one day doing kind of like a real sports type of longer magazine format show, or even potentially like the 30 for 30s as they came about. Again, well after I kind of set that. I never really had the intention of being an anchor, because that just wasn't something. I want to be out with people always. I just have to interact and feel the energy because I feed off of that. So play-by-play, when it was introduced to me as a true viable option, and I found that it was really interesting, and I could still tell stories, but I would just have to creatively weave them in throughout the broadcast. I felt like that was an avenue that I was willing to explore, and I'm certainly glad that I did, because it's paid off.
You talk about not a lot of representation from the female side. The first thing that your bio says, the first African American woman to serve as a play-by-play commentator for college football at ESPN. How important is that for you? And talk about kind of the path to get there, to get to college football, which a lot of people would say is one of the most coveted chairs.
Yeah, I think the representation clearly is important, because as I, kind of mentioned before, who I watched growing up did not look anything or sound anything like me. And so as we become more evolved as a society, and my earnest hope for utopia is that we do accept and understand people from all walks of life and all, different choices that they choose to make, that we see that we still have a commonality, right? So we share the love for sport, right? You are watching this game because you care about this team or these players, and I'm just the conduit to helping you kind of navigate through the game, and hopefully I can share some information, educate you, and entertain you in the process. So I think that representation matters, because I hear all the time from young people, especially young girls and young African American men and women, that I didn't even think of this as an opportunity. I think women kind of see themselves solely in the if you're not choosing to be an anchor or working behind the scenes, the on-camera way to get there is a sideline reporter. And so that's kind of all they aspire to, or only maybe aspire to a sideline reporter, which there's absolutely nothing wrong with that, because I was in that same boat. And that just opened my eyes a little bit more to see that there is a way to still be involved in the broadcast, and quite honestly, being more of a conductor of the broadcast, as opposed to just having a solo, right? Or just being a participant in certain spots. So that really moves me now, because when I talk to college students, because I talk to them often, say, hey, take this on as a possibility, right? Don't shut anything out. And I think the varying voices that you hear in the play-by-play chair are great. It is awesome to listen to Mark Jones call an NBA game, right? Because he's got what people would say, I'm not trying to equivalent them, but closest or similarly to how Stuart Scott was as a Sports Center anchor, right? He provided a different type of lingo or flair to the broadcast that you don't necessarily get from other broadcasters. So Mike Breen is a Hall of Fame broadcaster. He is absolutely terrific. And when you hear his bang, you know it's a big moment, right? But you can always look to different voices to take you on a different type of journey throughout the game and still get you to the end point. And I use Mark Jones just as an example because he's been in the business a really long time. And he's done a phenomenal job, I think, covering not only college football, but the NBA. And you can tell the difference. I don't have to point out in their broadcast calls, but Mark Jones, Mike Green, equally as great. So I want to bring the Tiffany Greene voice, and hopefully that will appeal to viewers and listeners.
I love it. Take us kind of behind the curtain. What does a typical college football week look like for you? We see it from the spotter chart side, but once it gets delivered to you and kind of leading up to that, what does your typical week look like?
Okay, so I've been waiting to say this, and I'll say it 50 million times over again. I am not as good as I am without Tony Britt Spotter Charts and all of the work that each of you put in to help make that happen. I rely on them, okay? I am waiting for them to be able to type in my notes just because it provides like a comfort zone, right? For me. Being able to know, okay, I got the information, I trust the information, right? And it just provides just a security blanket. But the week of preparation, especially as it pertains to when we get the boards, you know, after reviewing it, you're combing through the information. So, you know, once you learn to read the board, which was something that I had to figure out, you know, like I went through a couple of processes to try to get the best type of board. And so one was in numerical order, that you just kind of look to the player and maybe you just know, you know, what their positions are, having watched some film or, you know, being familiar with them. But what I love is that I get to sit there and now study the board, and I can, you know, visually see or easily look up or, you know, reference what it is that I am looking to do. The notes part of it is really big for me because it helps me to go back and just, you know, I'm a writer, so I like to write everything out, which probably isn't helpful, but it's for some, but for me it is. So I can go back and say, okay, you know, now's the time, you know, good time to kind of tell that story of, you know, Santee Marshall, who was D2 transfer and he didn't have a scholarship. He was a scout team video guy. And then all of a sudden, coach said, who the heck is this guy after game 4? Said we need to put him in the ball game. Like, but I get that opportunity because of my reliance on the spotter charts. So my game week, I've got to make sure I pick them up. And once I pick them up, I'm just combing through and just preparing myself after referencing names, numbers, positions, and getting familiar with where they are on the charts.
Anybody else can jump in with questions whenever you got them. Anybody got any?
And I'll go back. I want to say something because I don't feel like I may have answered the second part of one of your previous questions as it relates to getting to the play-by-play chair for college football, which is, you said, a coveted seat. And it was not without hesitation that I feel like I, you know, got there. I think, could I do it was one of the questions that I asked myself, because there weren't many women who did it. Gail Sierens, Pam Ward, Beth Mowens. Those were the 3 that I knew. So there was some reticence there because I wanted to make sure that I could be the best representation given this kind of golden key. But then also, I think there was a, you know, I think my producers were maybe slow to accepting that too. or just maybe, I think there's just uncertainty, right? You don't know. Who are you? You're a woman coming in to call college football. You've done sideline and you're young to the play-by-play chair from their perspective with relation to, national broadcast, because I've done 2 years of Fox Sports 1 as they started up with their Big East women's basketball package before I moved over. But I think that kind of catapulted and maybe gave some confidence. But it still was a couple of years after then. And going low profile games is probably the safest route to do. But I mean, the people that I worked with, like on the crew, were even like, well, they're just letting anybody in the play-by-play chair, huh? As a feeling of not belonging, or kind of like handing out to everyone, type of opportunities. So I think there were some things that I wrestled with, some internally, some externally, but it was just a matter of building trust. And so I tried to ensure that I was providing accurate information, that I was standing out in a way that they would want to call upon me. But I was doing, games again in the smaller schools to try to, get my reps up. And then I think I did that broadcast in, I want to say 2017, 18, I really don't remember, which was the groundbreaking broadcast. And I was nervous as heck. And I was like, crap. I felt the weight of the world, and anybody else who was interested in trying to get in this chair that looked anything like me. It's like, oh man, I really don't want to screw this up because everyone's, watching. And I didn't screw up enough that they took me off, but we went back and we critiqued and said, hey, this is what you got to do. This is how you get better. So I think it was just a matter of building trust over time and continuously asking for the opportunity.
Tiffany, can I ask, were we with you for that game?
I believe no, I don't think so.
2017?
Yes, I think it was. Hold on. That doesn't mean it was either I think it was 2017. If you were, I was really new to it because I knew Jay was using your boards at the time, but Mark Neely, who was calling games for the Thursday night HBCU package, it was 2017, was he had shown me a different chart, and that was the numerical order roster. So I may have used, I'm not sure what I used in that game.
It looks like our first chart for you was September 9, 2017, Alabama State at Troy.
Okay. So then I had switched.
We prepared this, and I've got your name on it here.
Yes, I did do that game. I do remember that game.
That wasn't your first, was it?
That was not the first, but that was because that was an E3 game. Excuse me. That was the E3 game. And then I think I did it in that game in October of 2017, which was Alcorn State at Alabama State.
That's what I've got. I see September 9, September 23, you were Akron at Troy.
Okay.
And then Alcorn State.
Oh, so you did do it.
Alcorn State at Alabama A&M. I've got down as
Alabama State. No, Alabama State. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Alabama State Troy is what we've got as your first chart. And that was your first game?
That was my first game, but the nationally televised game, the one that Colin was referring to, that was the Alcorn State, Alabama State game because it was on ESPNU. So it was a linear game.
Yeah, we had Alcorn, Alabama State.
Yeah. Okay.
I'll send that
Y'all
to
been
you.
with me from the beginning. Started from the bottom. Now we're here.
Diving back through the archives.
Yeah.
I'm going to send it to you.
That's impressive, BT Dub.
You
Mr.
talked
Reed, I
about
got one for you.
go for it.
So what would you say that like your most like the most special broadcast that you've been a part of has been in your career so far, and then why was it special?
The Celebration Bowl. And for me, that was a big deal this past year because I had been asking and asking and asking to do play-by-play for that game. I had been a part of it since its inception in 2015, and I was a sideline reporter, but my bosses didn't feel like I was good enough to be on that stage for that level of game because it was on ABC. And I felt some type of way, which has happened, earlier in my career, about having put in the sweat equity, the time, and getting close and connected to, a league or team, and then not having the, gift at the end to try to call the game. So it meant the world to me. And as the Lord would have it, he saved the first overtime game in Dion's last game at Jackson State, and high drama and so many different eyes. Heck, the NFL commissioner was there. I mean, like, I couldn't have scripted it any better than that. And so that's what made it so special, because they finally felt like I could do that game, and what a whale of a game it was.
So would you say that was like your kind of like like every broadcaster, I imagine's got some kind of event or game they want to call in their head at some point in their career. So would you say that was yours, or is there still one out there that you're chasing?
Oh, there's still one out there that I'm chasing. I want to get to the NFL and NBA. So if I can call regular season games, I know that people are like, well, why don't you say you want to call the Super Bowl? I'm good. I just want to get there. Okay. And I'm thankful if I get there. And whatever else comes after that. But the Celebration Bowl was a personal thing for me. Right. It was a professional accomplishment, but it was a personal thing for me too. So I think that's why it meant, a little bit more. But I certainly hope to be able to call consistently NBA and NFL games before my career's done.
You're on your way.
Thank you. Trying to get there. Thanks, Tony.
You talked about some of the pushback that you've gotten. How long did it take? And I'm sure at times you still, for some unknown reason, get some, but how long did it take you to kind of get comfortable in that chair, especially for the football side of it?
I think it is something that took me a while. And I would say within the last couple of years, I've really started to say, okay, well, it's just me. I'm all right. Because I think in part, you want to be yourself, but in other parts, you're trying to fit in and do whatever is necessary to try to get the opportunities. Well, I came to the conclusion that I can only be me, and no one can beat me at doing that. So if I could be the best version of me, then I'm good. And I would say it was probably in a reflection time as the pandemic was going on, that I sat there and was just like, okay, like at the end of the day, all of this pressure that you're putting on yourself doesn't really matter, because there's a whole lot of other stuff going on in this world. So let's find a way to, shift your mind and look at it from a different lens. You have a unique voice. You bring energy to your broadcast. You bring, and so I started focusing on those good things and trying to press pause or stop any thoughts that I had that were negative or not helpful to me progressing. And I reached out to some mentors and asked them, kind of their thoughts and just getting some encouragement along the way. Because this business is subjective and this business can be cutthroat, and you have to have foundation. For me, that's faith. And so I leaned on it a lot. And so I just came to the conclusion, again, kind of during pandemic time, so it wasn't that long ago, that I'm good. I'm me, and that's good enough. And everybody else will be okay, and I'll be okay too if you don't. I mean, that's fine. So it's taken me some time to be 100% transparent.
Who were some of those cheerleaders and mentors that kind of helped you stay on the path that you knew you were kind of destined to?
Yeah, I would say Jay Harris, David Aldridge, LaChina Robinson. They all work in the sports broadcasting space. And they've been just really strong, powerful voices for me. Always available when I need help. And I'm also very thankful too that I have a really strong family unit. And again, my faith community and our belief that helps ground me and reminds me that I'm all good. So I can bounce things off of me. My husband is a really tough critic and my biggest cheerleader. So he was just like, yeah, I couldn't listen to you today. Dang, ooh. I want that. I actually very much appreciate that. Because I know sometimes of like, if he says it's a good broadcast or it meets his approval, then probably good, because he's probably a little bit more critical. and I think that's a good thing, because we're sitting there on the couch and we'll watch other games and he'll say, hey, this is what I like, or this is something that's good or not. And that same type of breakdown, I'm able to get with my mentors. Jay Harris told me something that was so simple, but it's helped me throughout. Smile. When you're broadcasting, smile. You get to do something that a whole lot of people don't get to do. And it is a blessing. And you should be having some fun, and that's part of my personality too. So that helped me to, loosen up and get out of my head a little bit and be like, yeah, this is fun. This is cool. So that was one lesson that, like, when I first started, he told me, and it's been so helpful just to help me relax too.
All right, Tony has sent me some pictures to put up to.
Oh gosh. Oh,
no, nothing
Tony.
bad. Nothing bad.
Oh. Oh. Those are my whys.
It means so much. It means so much to me when clients share pictures of their family. In fact, are they in the house right now? Are we going to get a chance to see them?
They're not. They're all gone. So the baby, Aaron, he's not a junior or anything, but we call him Deuce. He's 2, so he's in daycare. Bryson, who is the oldest, is 5, and he's in kindergarten. And then my husband, Aaron, who's actually under the weather today, is an assistant principal at my former high school. So, yeah, those are my peeps, and I love them. That was at Jackson State. What's so funny is the boards are amazing, and you need them to be like, what is it, tabloid size? Man, you got to also, Tony, you should think about, making paperweights and then having that as some merch or something, because when you're out in different conditions, sometimes you need something to kind of weigh it down. But Jay and I, yeah, that's merch, man. Jay Walker and I are broadcast partners throughout the college football season, and we're proud to show off our boards, because he was like, did you get Tony's board? We're always talking. Did you get Tony's board? Did you call in the changes? Did you email the changes? What'd you do? So we talk about you all on a weekly basis. during
Oh,
the
my
bus.
ears are burning. My ears are burning. I
Oh,
love
yeah.
this picture because you have FAMU colors on too.
Yeah. Oh, wait. Run that back, Tony. Fam.
Not FAMU.
It's fam. Anybody want?
FAMU.
FAMU.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Yes.
I've been
That
saying
was
it
the
wrong
spring
all the
game.
time. It's good to learn. Like when I learned that you pronounce Alcorn State all good all the time.
Always Alcorn. That's it. And everyone goes on TV and they're like, Alcorn.
I know.
Yep, this was the game.
That's the
This was the game.
first linear.
That was the first game. That's right. First linear game. And I remember those. It's so crazy. You look and you're like, I remember those guys. My boards then, as compared to my boards now, as probably you guys know, a lot more color coding and writing in there. But yeah.
Talk about that process of getting your boards how you want it now and kind of seeing the evolution of them. What was the biggest thing that you wanted and kind of grew into where your boards are now?
I would say when I go into like a basketball season, I'll use that as a for instance. What they did previously, I'm probably really not paying a whole lot of attention to outside of if they won like an accolade or something like that. But when you're looking to then compare it to the type of season that they're having now, it's great to be able to reference that, Aaron Barnum scored 7.6 points last season and 4 something odd rebounds. And this year she's doubled, her production based on, the numbers now. So I think I'm always appreciative of the reference that I get in terms of the background, but figuring out what I'm going to read, like color coding it for me, what I'm going to kind of read first, what I'm going to take in. And I am still learning the board, which I feel like is cool because my common practice is to maybe write down a Word document that has kind of some of the punchy numbers and information that I want to make sure that I get out. And this season, I actually challenged myself a little bit more with being able to reference, say on the football chart, the statistical numbers and the highlighting and all that kind of stuff. I was kind of nervous. I just wanted to get the information right and out. And now I feel a lot more comfortable within the broadcast. So I can look to see, okay, yeah, they average, 120 rushing yards a game, and that's second best in the league. But also I can reference, their FCS ranking. So I started to learn to do that on the football side a little bit better. I'm still getting acclimated on the basketball side. I think it's because it moves so quickly. So my ability to reference down on the board is not as great as the time that I have in between plays for a football game.
All right, last one from me, and then I'll open it up for everybody else. When you look at your chart now, what do you wish was there that may not be? Because I think we've got somebody from every side of it. Cameron does the notes, and everybody knows he kills it.
Yeah.
Jack, Brandon, Miles with delivery, production, the data side, Sheila with the production and data side too, John and Jack as well. But you've got everybody kind of in one spot. What do you wish was there that may not be?
As a person who's appreciative for all the information that I receive, because there's already so much that's there, I don't need any more information. I'm not the one who needs any more, because again, I think there are still parts of exploration. I'm just using a basketball for this past week. So for basketball, I have a little bit more freedom here, but well, there isn't anything like I'm literally looking on here. There isn't anything that I don't feel, because I love the area right underneath. It's not going to help, but right underneath here, where I have the ability to write in or type in additional information. I don't know if you saw it. So right under the name, I didn't do it on this one as much, but I sincerely appreciate that. I alter the boards, obviously, sometimes in terms of fit for page. Yeah, no, yeah, no. Sometimes I wish I could manipulate, and I've just learned to just copy and paste, the things that are already generated. So I could personally, highlight or bold if they transferred from somewhere, because now everyone's transferring from somewhere all the time. I mean, that's just a new thing that's not going away. But that's so nitpicky that's not even worth really submitting to you as a, hey, could you do this? So, nope.
I have one suggestion in that regard. If you can hear me.
Mhm.
I don't know what type of software you have at home, but you could get a PDF from us, the same one we send to the print shop, ahead of time, and take a look at it, maybe, spend a couple hours with it and cut and paste and insert something in there.
Right. Yes. And that's what I've done, to just or I'll just retype it in, or I will copy it in another thing and then put it in, paste it back, and then can manipulate it that way. So it's not, again, it's not a.
The other thing for football in particular, we can add a couple of players, the coaches. I don't know if you're writing anything on the coaches, the head coaches and the coordinators, but Cameron can add a couple of lines down at the bottom of your players. Head coach, offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, and you can add some notes there that we can plug into the chart as well. You can also add just a general offensive notes and defensive notes. Another client requested that once, and it's easy to just find where the free space is and plug it in.
I can see that. I know that for football, I usually will use the couple of extra lines where you do the head coach and then maybe like the strength and conditioning coach or special teams or whatever on one side, and then you'll have the position guys along underneath the offensive coordinator. So I do kind of use those lines there, and then that free space. Here is what our challenge is during football season, which the information, to be honest with you, is not always timely, and the accuracy is always changing. Right.
I was going to ask you, what was the last thing you found that we did wrong?
So no, it was like some boards will get, again, this is football season only, where there's so many people, so many names on there for anybody who has played. And typically what we have started to do during our calls, why is that? Sorry, I don't know why it says my battery's running low. Is go through the chart anyway, but start striking a bunch of names, and then we'll call back and say, or email, hey, can you remove this name? So I think that's just a common practice that probably a lot of people do. Some people are, the coach will be like, he's not an offensive guy, he's the so-and-so, but it is what it is. And we just kind of look at the statistics, and then where can we shrink some places, and that's how we intend to eliminate. But I know the board generates based on whatever stat. So if like a guy makes a tackle on defense, but or maybe he's a special teams guy who makes a tackle, he's sometimes them as a third or fourth string guy, placed on the defensive chart. But we're not getting information to you of two deeps really quickly. And I'm not sure how well, I don't know what the reporting is for some of our games for you to have that information.
It's tough, honestly.
Mhm.
HBCUs simply lack the resources compared to so
Mhm.
many other schools.
Yeah.
Yours are only rarely when will information change so drastically during the course of the week that we'll redo one. Max Brown called on us for that when they changed after they fired their head coach, on a Monday. And
Mhm.
everything about their depth chart changed before Saturday.
Right.
But otherwise, it's only working with you and Jay that I've come to realize the information we get and can throw together on a Monday
Mhm.
is not nearly as accurate as many other places. So we just have it on the schedule that we'll touch base with you again every Thursday or Friday and get
Yeah.
an up. So I
Yeah, because
appreciate you working with us.
it's challenging. It's just challenging, and I realize that because I know like one of the I'll say this, one of the boards where I think we had done Jackson State ad nauseum over the last couple of years, and leading up to, I can't remember what board it was. I think that was the one. And it was just like a lot of guys were at it. And I'm cool with whatever the last board was and whoever you had for the last guy set of guys, roll with that until we can provide you what we know to be the most accurate depth chart. But it's a thing.
I love ways to improve.
Yeah. I'm a happy client.
Anybody else got any questions?
Yeah, Tiffany. So I know I mentioned before that I also have young kids at home, so I know what it's like to, I used to work in minor league baseball before I was with Tony, so I know all about, trying to balance everything. And so I guess how do you do it with, having young kids and, being a parent and being on the road, trying to fit in time to do your research and your boards. I see you in there at night, working and adding stuff. Like, how do you juggle it all? Because I am far from having all of this figured out. Mine are 9, 8, and 6.
Woo!
It's just, I know everybody says the same thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, so like, how do you juggle it all? Because I'm still trying to figure out how to make it all work myself.
Yeah, thanks for that question because I'm still trying to figure it out too. What I have learned is the early mornings are the golden hours because nobody's typically up. Nobody feels like being up, and I can get a lot of work done. And when I set my mind to it, especially during certain parts of the year, when you got to grind it out and you don't have much time or you understand what the day looks like, waking up about 4 or 5 up until it's time to get everybody ready for school and all that kind of stuff, I find to be the most productive nowadays. And it's the balance too of, I'm not sure what your village looks like, but for us, we're really blessed to have both sets of parents here that really help, because if it's not for them, then I'm not doing this. And that's honest. To travel as much as I do, as frequently as I go, it's just not possible in my mind. So it's turning on and off, and any little windows of time now I have come to cherish as either this is like 15 minutes for me, and I'm gonna put the phone on do not disturb, and I'm gonna take a walk. And that's my personal self-care time. And it's 15 minutes, and make it the best 15 minutes for yourself as possible. I think the same thing for like, okay, I've got a window of time. Someone's taking a nap or someone's out for an hour because they're playing outside and I can watch or something. Then I'll come in and try to like drop in some notes in the process. But there's small little pockets of time as opposed to a lot of dedicated time. I found throughout the day and night, because once nighttime hits, man, I'm done. Like, I've made it through the day, yay, and then from evening time on, and about 9 o'clock, I'm not really desiring to work as much. But that's because unless I have to get something to you guys
Yeah,
in time
yeah.
or deadline, I'll just wake up fresh in the morning and try to do it.
Makes sense. Thank you.
No problem. Thanks.
When you started your broadcasting career, was ESPN the end goal? And if it was, what were the steps you got to like introduce yourself to them or get yourself there?
Yeah, good question. ESPN was the end goal because they're the worldwide leader in sports, and that's what a lot of us grow up and consume all the time. And I think it was my junior year in college, junior or senior year in college, I would say, where I went to a job fair and met some folks from ESPN, but they were on the production side. His name was Fred Brown. He's since passed away. But Fred was like, hey, well, you can get a job at ESPN, but it's going to be behind the scenes. And I was just like, okay. And he was like, if you really want to be on air, this probably isn't the opportunity for you, but we can stay in touch. Sure thing. Everybody says stay in touch, but more than not, we're not staying in touch as best as we could. So I made it a point to reach out to Fred throughout the year, and I just tried I use this kind of like as my standard, but I'm going to reach out to you probably at the beginning of the year because it's a new year and everyone's starting new things. And then maybe I'll check in once more, but certainly summertime, everyone's doing their thing. July 4th comes around, yay. And then another time is holidays, right? So that's a way for me to consistently stay in touch without putting too much pressure on myself to really go, and organically do it. And that's what I did with him. And it was through like years of that and the National Association of Black Journalists, which for me was really helpful for connections, professional development, being able to get feedback. And I would see him there. Hey, Fred. And it wasn't a surprise because I had just emailed him at some point, earlier that year, where he said, okay, well, let me introduce you to such and such. And so I just kept networking. I believe in being relentless in that regard and building relationships with people, because relationships is how we exchange in business all the time. So it was probably, I would say, 10 plus years from the time that I made contact with ESPN back in college to the time that I actually received an opportunity to do some, independent contracting, sideline reporting for them for college football. It was nothing that happened certainly overnight, and I'm a pay your dues kind of gal. I certainly believe in that, and I bought into it, and it's been, beneficial. So more than a decade before I got to where I ultimately wanted to work and be.
Kind of going off of that, what would be some advice you'd have for people that are trying to enter or continue to grow in this industry?
Yeah, I would say the relationship piece is critical because, we've always heard this notion of, who do you know? Who do you know? Do you know so-and-so at such and such? Who knows you, right? When there's an opportunity that comes about, you want someone who knows you so that you can be top of mind when that job opening comes about. And I think you can do that in a very genuine way, right? You don't want to necessarily force yourself on someone, but you can be cordial and you can keep in touch. No one ever seems to mind that. And as long as you do it consistently, just like anything, you can get the good results. So I think being like relentless in relationship building, and then I'm a person, and I speak to my faith, but I believe in speaking things into existence, right? So whether you draw from one book or another book, I know The Secret was really big on, you put it out in the atmosphere and everything conspires in your favor. I think you speak it into existence, and then you write down what it is that you want, make it plain, and like make the roadmap to get there. So like this month, I'm gonna put it upon myself to reach out to this professional and this boss, right? And in that time, I'm going to apply for this. And by the time that I get to November, I need to have seen something sprout from this, right? I need to say I've gotten closer to this opportunity, or okay, they know my name. Okay, that's cool. I just kind of, I think you play it cool. Like the rush game or the press game is not the way to go. Not, race not given to the swift, but the one who endures. And so the endurance game can certainly play in your favor, because it's right place, right time, right opportunity when you're ready for it. So always finding ways to develop professionally and better yourself, to be more efficient as a worker, to be more creative, or to challenge yourself in a thing that really is not maybe a strong suit or a comfort zone. Like, so this year I'm going to step out and say, I'm going to do more of whatever. So I think those are ways that you can continuously evolve, but write it down, make it plain, be relentless in building your relationships, and challenge yourself to get better, work outside of your comfort zone.
Anybody else last minute?
Tiffany, thank you. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you all. I sincerely, Tony, you're my man. You're my man. We've had some really cool conversations and exchanged some really great emails all throughout. But y'all gotta know, like, I appreciate each and every one of you, because you make my job easier. You help me out, and you make me look good. And I know there's a lot of scrambling and a lot of last minute stuff, and a lot of this place is closed and you gotta send it here or whatever. But you all make it happen, and I know that I can count on you, and that means a whole lot.
You should hear about our XFL scramble the last couple of days.
Oh my goodness. Oh boy.
We
Oh
got
boy.
it done. I don't want to call it a scramble now. I think we executed it pretty well.
It was a fire drill.
Yeah. The fire drill. Well, yeah, you guys manage a whole lot of different sports for a lot of different people, and events in general. So tip my hat to you.
All right.
Thank you so much, Tiffany.
Thank you. I appreciate everybody. Well, I hope you have a great rest of the week.
You too.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Tiffany.
Thank you.
Okay. Be well. Thanks again.